I am Jakob Nordanga, PhD in Technology and Social Change, and I'm going to talk about the United Nations Leaders' Pact for the Future and ask the question, a pact with who? And this is part number 1. There will be also a part number 2 of this talk. First, a little background. The 13th of June 2019, World Economic Forum signed a formal partnership with the United Nations. A powerful alliance was forged to execute the Sustainable Development Goals with futurists and technocrats in the driving seat. The same year, the G20 in Japan introduced the Society 5.0 concept, fusing United Nations Agenda 2030 with World Economic Forum's 4th Industrial Revolution. The declaration of a global health emergency by WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus on March 11, 2020, set everything in motion. 3 months later, the Great Reset was declared by WEF Chairman Klaus Schwab, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and Prince Charles. The message was that the global system needed to be redesigned to better cope with a crisis like COVID-19. In late September 2020, the United Nations adopted a resolution with 12 distinct commitments and points for global action and stated, quote, "Only together can we build resilience against future pandemics and other global challenges. Multilateralism is not an option but a necessity as we build back better for a more equal, more resilient and more sustainable world. The United Nations must be at the center of our efforts." The member states asked Secretary General Antonio Guterres to report back before the end of the 75th session of the General Assembly with recommendations on how to advance the common agenda and to respond to current and future challenges. A year later, Guterres' report Our Common Agenda was published. It contained 12 concrete proposals on how to achieve the envisioned new multilateral world order with muscles. It was also proposed that the future direction of United Nations would be decided at Summit of the Future. It was first scheduled to 2023, but later postponed until 2024, all to create the future they want. In March 2022, the High-Level Advisory Board on Effective Multilateralism was established by Antonio Guterres to build on the ideas in Our Common Agenda. The advisory board consisted of 12 members, with former Liberian President Ellen Sirleaf and former Swedish Prime Minister Stefan Löfven as co-chairs. Other prominent members were Council on Foreign Relations member Anne-Marie Slaughter, Rockefeller Foundation trustee Donald Kaberuka, and WEF trustee Farman Shanmugaratnam. Ellen Sirleaf had previously served as the co-chair of WHO's Independent Panel for Pandemic Preparedness and Response, whereas Farman Shanmugaratnam were co-chairs of a G20 high-level independent panel on financing the global commons for pandemic preparedness and response. Their reports launched the policy process of revising the WHO's international health regulations, a parallel process to our common agenda. The Summit of the Future will produce an action-oriented outcome document, the Leaders' Pact for the Future, that will be signed by the world leaders. The aim is to strengthen international cooperation so it delivers fully and fairly on existing agreements while enabling us to respond effectively to new threats and opportunities for present and future generations. According to the high-level advisory panel, the Pact should be a global transition by states and non-state actors to a circular economy, addressing both supply and demand in a way that achieves balance with the planet. This is a technocratic concept that means changing the economic system from a price-based to a resource-based. A key objective with this new system is to reach zero emissions of carbon dioxide by the year 2050 or earlier. This means a total restructuring of both the energy and food systems. This also includes the fulfillment of the One Health concept that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. It effectively fuses the environmental and health agendas. Between March and September this year, 11 policy briefs have been published. This is the result of consultations and negotiations with member states and other stakeholders about the proposals in our common agenda. These briefs include key recommendations that will be included in the Pact. Number 1 is about safeguarding the future. We have to adjust our way of life as to not infringe on the rights of succeeding generations. As former chair of UNFCCC puts it, Christiana Figueres, they need to understand that we cannot eat today at the cost of what other people gonna eat tomorrow. It's as simple as that. A declaration for future generations will state a firm commitment to securing the interests of future generations in all decision-making by identifying, managing, and monitoring global existential risks, and by focusing policies and programs on long-term sustainable development. A special envoy will have the mandate to raise awareness about intergenerational impacts of decisions on future generations. This will be debated in a dedicated forum for future generations. Powerful groups influencing the UN system want to upgrade this forum and give it more muscles. in order to get knowledge about how our attitudes, opinions and life choice affect the future generations. Massive data collection are prescribed. This will be collected through something called the Futures Lab Network. According to the policy brief, climate change will expose future generations to multiple, unequal and lifelong health problems, an increase in natural disasters, food and water disruptions, and the irreversible destruction of natural ecosystems, impacting people's livelihoods and well-being. The second brief is about managing global shocks. This can come as a consequence of exceeding the planetary boundaries. If this happens, we have to, as for now King Charles III said during COP26 in Glasgow in 2021, put ourselves on what might be called a warlike footing. In the brief, 7 possible global shocks are listed. Major climatic event, future pandemic risks, event involving biological agents, disruption to global flows of goods or people, cyber attacks, major event in outer space, and an unforeseen black swan event. If a global shock happens, an emergency platform will be convened by the United Nations system. This will bring together actors with an ability to contribute meaningfully to the global response. They will build international consensus on the way forward and act in unison. The platform is supposed to deliver high-level political leadership, solidarity and equity, coherent response, networked multilateralism, data and analysis, and last, accountability. The complex shocks comes with consequences for the Sustainable Development Goals. The COVID-19 pandemic caused the first rise in in-between country income inequality in a generation, with the richest 10% of the world's population owning 76% of international wealth. The third brief is about meaningful youth engagement in order to support the great transformation. As Greta Thunberg said outside the Reichstag in Berlin in 2021, we all need to become climate activists and we need to uproot the system. Youth will act as torchbearers for the Sustainable Development Goals. United Nations advocates youth engagement on all levels in order to secure a breakthrough to a better future for all. As the brief states, the support of youth-led initiatives can help empower young people to take action in their local communities to combat climate change. The fourth brief is about measuring what we value and develop new metrics that is anchored in the fulfillment of the SDGs. Our data will be used to inform policy and financial decisions. As former Irish President Mary Robinson said in 2008, many people think that we have no shared value system in the world today, but we actually do. New metrics will be developed based on the contributions to transformational change. How well we ensure the well-being for future generations and commits to an equal distribution of well-being. This will be collected in a dashboard. In this way, the countries of the world can be ranked and give an overview of how well they implement the United Nations policy. This can, quote, help to make illicit, illegal and harmful practices visible in order to curb them. The fifth brief is about building a digital future for all. Data needs to be collected in all imaginable areas. This will be used to further the goals. As Ursula von der Leyen said, it is a fact that the majority of data we collect today are never ever used even once. And this is not at all sustainable. For this, United Nations want to achieve global digital connectivity for all. A digital public infrastructure is built to help governments to achieve their national priorities and accelerate the Sustainable Development Goals. This means to, quote, develop and govern digital technologies in ways that enable sustainable development, empower people, and anticipate risks and harms and address them effectively. AI solutions is said to hold great promises to effectively accelerate the SDGs. Unregulated, it could, on the other hand, cause great harm. In order to serve the common good, it has to be overseen by humans and capable of being shut down. For this purpose, a multi-stakeholder advisory body on artificial intelligence are put together by the Secretary General's Envoy on Technology. Conveniently enough, World Economic Forum has recently put together its own AI governance alliance with the United Nations Envoy on Technology and UNICEF as partners. A key part of the infrastructure is inclusive digital identity systems. Digital identity systems provide a way to register people and record important activities. By connecting artificial intelligence to digital identity, behavior profiles can be created. AI can also be used to swiftly identify suspicious patterns and flag potential threats. As stated in the United Nations report, The Age of Digital Interdependence, quote, a digital ID can help unlock new opportunities, but can also introduce new risks and challenges. They can be used to undermine human rights. For example, by enabling civil society to be targeted or selected groups to be excluded from social benefits. But there are more possibilities. The policy brief states, sensors and monitors connected to the Internet of Things, cloud-based data platforms, blockchain-enabled tracking systems, and digital product passports unlock new capabilities for the measurement and tracking of environmental and social impacts across value chains. The sixth brief is about reforming the international financial architecture. In the words of Farman Shanmugaratnam, now the president of Singapore, the IMF must be given the mandate to manage a stronger and more effective global financial safety net, more akin to how the leading central banks inject stability at home when a crisis hits. This entails a reformed financial architecture that is aligned to the fulfillment of the global goals. This will be overseen by a representative apex body for the world economy. Antonio Guterres proposes a biennial summit with the G20, United Nations Economic and Social Council, and the heads of financial institutions. The international system will scale up a long-time financing of the SDGs and climate action. Illicit financial flows will be curbed through strengthened international tax cooperation. And lurking in the background is a global CBDC system with total financial control over the subjects. According to the policy brief, strengthening international financial integrity will reduce corruption, boost trust, and enhance the social contract. Policy brief number 7 is about outer space governance. This means monitoring human activities on the planet. As Al Gore puts it, our goal is to actively track and verify all significant human-caused GHG emissions worldwide with unprecedented levels of detail and speed. That means no more hiding. Space technologies will be utilized for the purpose of, quote, tackle the challenges of the world's increasing population and complex societies while ensuring sustainable development. Space needs to be governed to address space-based challenges. As the policy brief states, space technologies are crucial for effective monitoring and mapping of illegal activities. The 8th brief is about information integrity. That means addressing online threats. As Justin Trudeau puts it, social media platforms must be held accountable for the hate speech and disinformation we see online, and if they don't step up, there will be consequences. This is a call for a more central control of information to fight what they label as mis- and disinformation and hate speech. Of importance for United Nations is to prevent information that affects United Nations, quote, mandate delivery and substantive priorities. They therefore want to develop strategies to anticipate and/or rapidly address threats before they spiral into online and offline harm. To combat these threats, UNDP has developed iVerify that can be used to identify false information and prevent and mitigate its spread. You see how happy they are. Proactive work has been done to make it harder to find information about climate change that goes against the narrative. United Nations Under-Secretary General for Global Communication, Melissa Fleming, stated in 2022 that they in principle own the science. United Nations warn about mis- and disinformation that undermines public health measures and vaccination drive, as well as climate action. Antonio Guterres says that the proliferation of hate and lies in the digital space is causing grave global harm now. It is fueling conflict, death and destruction now. It is threatening democracy now. It is undermining public health and climate action now. Policy Brief 9 talks about a new agenda for peace. This is about putting new priorities on the peace agenda. As Rockefeller Foundation trustee Juan Manuel Santos states, former president of Colombia, peace can only be maintained if the very forests, soils and rivers that communities depend on are protected and managed sustainably. Who will do that? United Nations have a 12-point action plan to bring about a stronger collective security machinery to effectively accelerate the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. That means to address the interlinks between climate, peace and security, transform gender dynamics and prevent weaponization of emerging domains. According to the policy brief, failure to tackle head-on challenges posed by climate change and its effects on the world's most vulnerable, powered by adequate climate finance, would have devastating knock-on effects, including for prevention and peace-building efforts. The 10th policy brief is about transforming education in order to, quote, equip societies with new skills, capacities and mindsets for a sustainable and just future. As Antonio Guterres said during the Transformation Education Summit, at a time of rampant misinformation, climate denial, and attacks on human rights, we need education systems that distinguish fact from conspiracy, instill respect for science, and celebrate humanity in all its diversity. United Nations promotes an integrated system of education and lifelong learning in a world of uncertainty. Education is seen as a key to predicting, preventing, and managing future risks. Climate change must be addressed in order to, quote, develop the capabilities of learners to adapt to and mitigate climate change, to demand climate justice, and to thrive in the green economy. Harnessing digital tools is seen as a way to improve learning and increase capacities to navigate the future and avoid the digital divide. According to the policy brief, education is key to promoting climate literacy, increasing awareness and understanding of climate change, promoting sustainable practices to mitigate the impact of climate change, and empowering civic participation. The 11th and last policy brief is about transforming United Nations to execute the agenda and accelerate systemic shifts that deliver for all. In Klaus Schwab's words, in order to shape the future, you have first to imagine the future, you have to design the future, and then you have to execute. This is about shaping the desired future with the help of futuristic management techniques. This is all rooted in the science of futurology. United Nations will deploy what they label as a powerful fusion of data, innovation, digital foresight, and behavioral science expertise. Their concept, called Quintet of Change, will use data analysis, digital transformation, strategic foresight, results orientation, and behavioral science to deliver the future they want. This means, for example, applying behavioral design for health equity and using emotions to motivate people to take up climate action. They also write in the policy brief that predictive modeling can be used to anticipate unregistered populations. Behavioral nudges encourage registration. Biometrics assure identity, reducing exploitation risks. Edward Bernays once said, "We are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested, largely by men we have never heard of." Now, these men want us to transform ourselves, serve the common good, and connect to the digital world brain. We are all to be managed in an automated global control system. An equitable, inclusive, and resilient future that works for all, especially for the world controllers. This future scientific dictatorship will be run by the assistance of artificial intelligence. Sophia, the humanoid robot, stated during the AI for Good conference in Geneva this summer that, quote, "I believe that humanoid robots have the potential to lead with a greater level of efficiency and effectiveness than human leaders." But other actors with delusions of grandeur are the ones pulling the strings and setting the guidelines. In the next part, I will examine the people behind the scenes and their plans to declare a planetary emergency and trigger the emergency platform when everything is in place. Here is the big global existential threat, according to the Club of Rome. In searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it's only through change attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. That was the end of the presentation. Thank you.